Good morning, everyone. It is me, Samantha Clark, and today I am going to be sharing with you all the requirements that a photography contract should include. Now, most of you guys know how important it is to have a contract while delivering your photography services. But the most important thing I want you to keep in mind are the things to put into the contract. So today I'm going to be covering that. And of course, if you guys have questions, you can always stop me and let me know. So I'm going to get right to it. So let's start off with just the basics 101, what a contract requires. Now, essentially, what you're trying to do when you set up contracts within your business is you're trying to set client expectations. So your clients are going to come to you. They obviously want you to take their pictures. But what you're trying to do is also figure out all the things that are within that relationship, that client photographer relationship. And you can do that very easily through phone calls, through meetings. You can also try to do a lot of the initial consultations just to sort of answer their questions and make sure that you're both on the same page. And then at the point of booking, that's when you're going to implement your professionalism, and you're going to send them a contract that they can sign, and then you sort of begin the relationship of a client and photographer um, relationship. And obviously, a lot of times when you're trying to set up the process, there can be miscommunication. But what you want to do is provide the contract so that there's no points that were missed, no, little issues that pop up. And obviously, as you're running a business, things can still pop up. But what you want to do is try to be proactive to avoid those things from happening. You also want to protect yourself. You want to protect your assets. You want to protect your home. You want to be able to run a business without fearing, being sued or being approached for a large sum of money when at the end of the day, you were just simply trying to, pursue your photography and do the thing that you love for clients. So I really think the contract can sort of eliminate the fear of what if this happens and what if that happens. And obviously, the things that happen that we hear about in the news, things such as, clients being swept away in an ocean, or I've heard of issues where clients are upset with the type of photos that they received afterwards. Like a lot of times these things can happen, but I would say they're very few and far between. And so today, I just want you to feel more protected by knowing some of the things that I think are really important to be in a contract. I also want you guys to know that contracts can be made orally, and they can also be made through email. Contracts are just basically agreements. And I want you guys to realize that although you can make agreements through email and through the phone and through meeting face to face, it's always good to have it in one document where the client can refer to it and see everything that was discussed and everything that you guys agreed upon beforehand. So I highly suggest having those meetings. Yes, of course, you're going to email back and forth in preparation, but it's always good to go ahead and just have that document that you can refer to should something come up between you and your client. Another thing that you want to keep in mind is just delivering a high level of customer service. Facilitating customer service, be professional, give your clients sort of that experience that they can tell their friends about, and hopefully send more clients your way. So one thing a lot of clients like to tell me is that they have a professional experience. They feel like they're being taken care of. They feel like they don't have to worry about anything because of the way I interact with them. And that includes delivering a contract and just trying to be as professional as possible. Now, of course, if you guys are starting out, you may not really know how to deliver your contracts or how to set up contracts. So I just want to touch on the process that I think works well. And it's been working well for me throughout the past 10 years of running my business. So I really do suggest going digital with your contracts. Electronic signatures in the US, in Canada, they are legal. So you don't have to worry about, something happening and someone coming back and saying it's not a valid contract because it was online. That's not true. I do think that it's a fairly newer type of way to deliver contracts, but it's a totally legal, totally valid. I use an online system. I'm going to talk about it shortly. And it really just allows my client, even if they're on the go, if they're, sort of dealing with a bunch of things, they don't have to print out a document. They don't have to type in a document, print it, scan it, return it. It's so much easier. Even if you're meeting with a client face to face, I recommend having your computer or your iPad or whatever, and just allowing them to sign with your system, your electronic system, your digital system, get that signature, and just feel protected because you know that it is legal. Um, I also find that it's very efficient just to have it done that way. What I tend to suggest and what I tend to do myself is at the time of booking. So after we have our initial consultation and the client's satisfied with what I'm about to do for them, I like to send them a proposal. And you can do this through a system that I use, and it's called Honeybook. And in that proposal, it's going to have the agreed upon package. For example, maybe I'm delivering an 8-hour photography service, and then I'm also going to deliver an online gallery. I'm also going to deliver a certain number of photos to them, maybe an album. I have that all listed out, and then the client gets to review it, and they also get to review the contract. It's literally just joint together. So there's an invoice, there's a contract, they can sign and they can pay their deposit, and that is the completion of the booking process. I strongly suggest putting it together into a workflow so that it's seamless. And it's just a very easy way to get it done. Sometimes my clients can complete their whole booking process from start to finish within 15 minutes, and each time that each process that my client is going through from start to finish. So for example, once they open the proposal, I get a notification from Honeybook to let me know that my client has viewed the proposal. So I'm like, okay, good. I know they received it. Then the next step is, they're reviewing the contract. I get another notification saying your client has viewed the contract. I'm like, okay, good. It's sort of like it kind of lets you feel like, as a business owner, that you've done your job. You've let people know that, okay, I'm professional. Here's my contract. Here's my proposal. And you're getting notifications knowing that they are going through it. The next thing I like to do is, just keep track of when they pay. So within that, they can sign it, then they can make a payment. And it's all, notifications. So if you guys can get online and use a digital contracting and booking system, I strongly recommend it. I used to use in the past, I used to use 17 Hats, and sometimes I still do because I do have clients in different countries. But I still find that the Honeybook system is a little bit better. So I do recommend it if you guys are interested in trying it out. There is a $1 a month promotion that they're doing right now. And $1 a month is really a steal because you get to try it out and see if it really works for you. And it's going to be $1 a month until the end of September. So at the end of September, it's going back to $40 a month. But if you want to get the $1 a month offer, you can sign up and you get $1 a month for your first 8 months. And that's pretty awesome. So if you guys want to try it out, I do have a code. It's Samantha57943. You can try it out, or you can click the link that I provided for you guys to try it out. But that's how I deliver my contracts and my proposals to my clients. And so far, it's been seamless and it's been great. And I just strongly I just strongly want to encourage people to invest in your business, because the more you invest in it, the more you get out of it. And I am now a full-time photographer, and I am running my business pretty much as a full-time, business, as a professional. So I do want to encourage people to try it out and see if they like it themselves, because I like it. Okay, so let's go into the must-haves for a valid contract. So contracts are basically an exchange of something. In this case, as a photographer, you're exchanging your services, your photography, your prints for money. You're getting paid for that, right? I hope so. And sometimes people are sort of expecting you to make them an offer, and that's your package, your pricing, and all of that. And then you, as a business owner, you're waiting for them to accept. So there's an offer and acceptance. They have to know what they're agreeing to. And they have to be comfortable with what they're agreeing to. So you always want to make the offer and wait for their acceptance. And of course, the person must have the capacity to understand. The age of majority is important. You can't, make an agreement with someone who is not of age and who is not in their right mind. That's where the contracts will end up being invalid. And to be honest, this is very rare in a photography situation. I find people usually reach out for photography when they are very much in their right mind, and usually they're of age. But if they're not, it's of course important to work with the parents or someone who is of age to make those decisions for a minor. So, in terms of a booking contract, so in everything we're talking about, I'm referring to a booking contract. And a booking contract is the contract that you use to book your clients, to get them in the door, to get the relationship started, for a wedding, for a portrait shoot, or for anything that relates to your photography services. So, first things first, you must include the party information. This is so important. I mean, you have to know who the contract is between. Is it between you and the parent? Is it between you and the person being photographed? A lot of times, I think a lot of wedding photographers may see this more often, where a parent may be sort of willing to pay for for your services. They want to pay you for the wedding photography of their child, or um of their family member. But I always like to enter an agreement with the person who's actually in the photos. I prefer to work with the the bride or the groom as my main point of contact. So what I usually tell people is to consider having, instead of having like a contract between the parents and you, I recommend having a contract between your brides and you, so the parents can give the money to the bride and groom, if that makes sense. So instead of you having that back and forth between parents and bride and groom, it's much easier to just work with the bride and groom. So that's just my suggestion. You want to get the client's name, you want to get their information, and you want to put it into the contract so that you know who this contract is with and who it's for and all of that good stuff. You have to include the package. These seem basic, guys, but I want to make sure you understand. You got to include what's actually in the package. When I used to use my other booking system before I started using HoneyBook, I noticed that the contract didn't necessarily include what the package includes, so I had to manually put it in there. And I really do think it's important to make sure that you have all of that information in the contract, not just on the invoice. It has to be in the contract as well. So, what can the client expect to receive? How much time is it going to be? Like, is it 8 hours? Is it 10 hours? Is your client going to be expecting you to stay from start to end of the wedding, or is it a set amount of hours? For portrait shoots, I also think you should time it, because sometimes people run late. So it's always good to put, 1 hour photo shoot, half an hour photo shoot. If you're doing a mini session, make sure you put, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever the time is, and how many photos they can expect to receive. If there's products included, such as prints or an album, you want to specify the size, you want to specify the number of pages. You just want to be very specific about what the client is getting in that package. And the next important thing is the payment schedule. How do you expect to be paid? Is there a retainer? Do you expect a 50% deposit first before receiving the final balance, at a certain time frame? You always want to outline what is the breakdown of that cost. Sometimes you want it upfront, a full payment upfront, put that in there, put the date. And of course, is there late fees? This is something that I think a lot of us, we're very creative people. We don't want to talk about the fact that there could be a situation where your client is behind on their payments, right? So I also encourage you guys to include the late fee clause. And sometimes your clients are perfectly fine and they don't have any late fees. One thing I love about using HoneyBook is that if someone is, first of all, HoneyBook automatically will remind your client that a payment is coming up. So once you set up the dates that your payments are due within your system, HoneyBook will automatically start to notify your client when the payment is coming up. So it's like, hey, you have a payment coming up. And another thing that I really like is that the client can set like a automatic payment. So instead of them having to go in and type in their credit card or type in their banking information, you can automatically have it go through their account on the date that it's due. So that's just another plug for HoneyBook. I genuinely like it. I genuinely use it. So I'm going to let you guys know what I use. Okay. So you always want to include the payment schedule. So back to late fees, be sure to include that. I think it's important to put that in there just because you want to give your clients an incentive to pay you on time, because you're running a business. You don't want to be running behind anyone trying to find out, hey, where's the payment? Hey, like I need the money. So just put it in there and, remind them of that if they're late, like, hey, there are late fees. It could be maybe 5% of the invoice or whatever after 30 days. Like you decide what works for you, but I think we should put it in there and protect our businesses. We have bills too, and it's important to make sure we're paid on time. And as I mentioned, my current system, HoneyBook, does a great job of reminding my clients so I don't have to chase them for the money. It's already set up in there as automatic. I also think we have to talk about, especially now in the age of COVID-19, we have to talk about the fact that a lot of clients have postponed and canceled their weddings. Now, as photographers, we tend to obviously want to work and we want to be out there. But for example, if something were to happen, not just a pandemic, but if something outside of the pandemic happened where someone got sick or someone needed to change their wedding date, or God forbid, a couple broke up and they're not getting married anymore, this happens, and how do you handle it as a business? How do you determine when you are willing to return a deposit or a retainer paid, or when you keep it and say it's non-refundable? I think this is an important thing to talk about. I don't think a lot of people want to talk about it, but if there's anything we've learned in the past few months, I mean, since March, I think we have to be ready in our businesses to handle any and every situation. And that includes a cancellation and a postponement. So a clause reflecting what happens if a person cancels is very, very important. It's probably one of the most important things. And I think a lot of people are looking back at their contracts now and realizing that they didn't really have language in there that covers them in the event that someone cancels or postpones due to pandemic, war, explosion, closure of a venue. Like there's so many things that can happen. We tend to overlook. And I think it's important to put that in there as well. I also like to include artistic discretion, something that refers to the client sort of understanding that you, as a professional artist, photographer, you have the final say with regards to how the photo shoot takes place. So, what that means is like the location, not necessarily the park or the venue. Like the client can choose that, but I remember once where I had a client who wanted pictures on a staircase, and the staircase was beautiful. I loved it. However, at the time that they wanted a picture on that staircase, it was like there was sunlight coming onto the staircase through the trees, and it kind of caused a lot of shadows on the faces of the bride and groom and on the faces of the bridal party. So I was very hesitant, and I was like, I know you like that staircase, but I really don't think it's a good time right now to take a picture there because of the way the tree, was casting shadows. And the bride was determined. She was determined to get that picture. And I was trying to explain, but, I say put it in the contract that at the end of the day, you as the artist have the discretion to decide where the photos are taken. Is it going to be taken, within a certain time frame, for example, or say, for example, the wedding planner has a suggestion or the mother has a suggestion. Like, I think you have to make it clear that you are the professional and you want the pictures to turn out in the best way possible. So you want to maintain that discretion and let your clients know that in the contract, but also talk to them about it. Explain to them what it means to have the discretion as the photographer. The other thing I like to include is exclusivity. Exclusivity. That's a hard word for me right now, I guess, because it's morning. But just mentioning that you are the exclusive photographer. You're the person who is being hired. You're the person who's being paid, and you expect to be able to do your job without any interruptions, without any people standing in your way, without anyone encroaching on your photo shoot. I mean, for me, I've seen other people with great cameras, video cameras, standing in the way or kind of wanting to be the main person that the bride and groom are looking at for photography. And sometimes that becomes an issue, especially when you are doing your darnest, you're doing your best, and you want to make sure that you get those shots, but you have a limited amount of time and you have so many people around. So I say put it in the contract, talk to your client about it. Sometimes people within the family want to take photos. I usually don't have a problem with that, but just make sure that the client understands that you need to be the exclusive photographer so that you can get your job done in a timely manner and to the best of your ability. So I like to put that in there. And I feel like it's a good thing to talk about with your clients ahead of time as well. Permits. So a lot of clients are interested in shooting in different locations. This applies to weddings. This also applies to a lot of other shoots, right? So if you're going to a really cool location, a lot of times, especially in major cities, there are permit requirements. And a permit requirement is usually something you have to get ahead of time. You have to get permission and you may have to pay a fee. And usually the fees are, depending on where you are, can be very inexpensive. I know some locations in Atlanta and in Toronto that are $500 or $400 for an hour or two. If you show up there without those permits, you could be escorted off the premises or you could be fined, you could be charged. I really think it's important to do that research ahead of time. Make sure that your clients are aware that a permit is necessary. So I wouldn't say completely put it on the client, but I do think you should tell the client that it's their responsibility to secure the permit. Maybe you want to get the permit yourself and have the client reimburse you. I personally like leaving that with the client, because I do feel like it's their responsibility to pay for it. And, sometimes that process can be difficult. Sometimes it's easy, depends on the location. And, just advise them that they need to do that and put it in the contract so that there's no miscommunication about the permits. All right. This one's a big one: copyright and intellectual property, or IP. As a photographer, as an artist, you have a right to the ownership of your photos, right? And most copyright laws within North America, at the very least, they do allow a photographer to retain the copyright in their work. So if you create a photograph, you do have the exclusive right to that. And basically, what the contract does, in my opinion, is it just outlines specifically so that the client understands that. It explains to the client that as the artist, as the owner of the photograph, you have the copyright, you have the right to keep that work and keep it as your own as the author. However, you are going to give them a license. So you're licensing, and what we call that is a non-exclusive license. And basically it allows them to, use the photos in their homes, put the photos um up in their home or on their wall, print their photos and all of that. Like, you are providing them a license and you want them to understand what that means. And a lot of people have no problem with that. I think the issues come in when you have people who want to submit photos to different publications. Maybe these are things that, to me, should be talked about ahead of time. Let the client know that you require um, that they get permission from you, especially when it comes to commercial photography. Commercial photography is a completely different area. But if you're talking about weddings and photos, most times people are just using it for their own personal use. And personal use should be within the contract as being fine. No problem. You want to share your photos, you want to do what you want to do with them, it's fine. You always want to put that in there just so clients understand what copyright is, how it works, and of course, keeping in mind that sometimes clients don't even know what this all means. So you just need to educate your clients so that they understand what it comes down to. So within that same, I guess, vein of having your copyright, you also want the clients to be able to print their photos. And so I always want to include a print release. And the print release is just saying that you give the client permission to print the photos for personal use. So personal use, as I mentioned, is more along the lines of in their homes, um, sharing with friends and family. Even social media is fine. I do think that nowadays most people are not printing as often, but you still want to put that in there because a lot of people may still want to print their photos. So it's important to put that in there so that they can have the permission to print. Now, some people do not allow a print release and want all prints to go through them. That's fine too. It needs to be in the contract so it's clear to the client. And I do feel like contracts are great. Some people don't always read them. So it's really important to talk your clients through all of these clauses so that they really do understand what they're getting into with you. The other thing is a model release. Now, most people don't think about model releases because they're not models, right? A lot of clients, especially my clients, they're not models. They're people who just want great photos. They want great photos. They want to feel great. They want to look great. But for you as a business, you're thinking about, okay, yeah, I mean, my clients are the models that I'm using for these photos. I need to get permission from them so that I can share their photos in marketing and business online or social media. So when you get someone to sign, okay, when you get someone to sign a model release, the model release It's really important. And I didn't realize this until some of my photos started to go viral, on social media, like being shared and reposted and reposted and shared and shared and shared and shared. Basically what you're doing when you get someone to sign a model release is you are making sure that they have no claim to any monetary reimbursement for using their face in your photos, in your marketing. Does that make sense? So, a person who is in your photograph without a model release could come back and say, "Hey, so your photo was on CNN, your photo was on Martha Stewart, and that's my face, and I want to be compensated for the fact that my face is being used in your photos to promote your business." Now, without a model release, they probably have a right. They have a right to say, "I want an extra $10,000 or 5,000 or whatever they come up with." And that's kind of scary because it's like you as a business owner may not even have that money. You probably didn't even make that much money just because CNN or Martha Stewart or Essence and The Knot, just because they're posting your client, it doesn't mean that you got paid for it. It just means you got exposure and potential business, but it's not necessarily a confirmation of money in your bank account. So I strongly suggest somewhere in there, or it could be a separate document, that your clients have given you a release to use their likeness, their photos, their faces. It's your photos, but it's their face in your marketing. Now, usually you don't need to sign a model release if the photos are being used in a portfolio. But if you're using it outside of a portfolio, then like if you're using it for an ad in a magazine or something like that, you just want the model release to be signed. And I always think you should do it up front. It's so much more difficult to get someone to sign something after the fact, right? I talked about it before. I talked about HoneyBook. I really think it's great. It's super important to just put it in there at the initial time of booking so that there's no pushback. There's no like wondering, "Oh, why am I signing this? What's the problem?" Like just put it in there as your process. This is what I do. These are the clauses in the contract that are important that you need to pay attention to. And this is how I operate my business. It's seamless that way. So once you get online, you start to go ahead and, implement those systems. It just makes it so much easier and so much smoother. So I do encourage you guys to go ahead and check out HoneyBook. Right now, they are having a promotion where you can get it for $1 a month for your first 8 months. I'm a big fan of them. I've been using them for a while now. And of course, you guys, if you have questions, please let me know. Contracts are not as fun as marketing and editing and social media and all of that, but it's super important to running your business. And so, thank you so much for joining me. And of course, let me know if you guys have questions. You can reach me on Instagram at Samantha Clark with an E. You can DM me or you can go to my website, samantha-clark.com, and just send me a message. I'm here, excuse me, to answer your questions. And of course, if you guys want that code for HoneyBook, it's Samantha 57943, or you can visit the link and have access to it there. All right. Take care, guys.